Community organizers, a low-wage workers representative, and a community development researcher had a conference focusing on the issue of money in politics and corporate power. This is just over an hour, 10 minutes.
Check. Sorry. This one is this. Check. Okay. All right. So how are we doing on those mics right there? Steve, do you mind speaking into that?
Yeah, I think this one works fine. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. You good over there?
This one works.
Okay, excellent. So, welcome everybody. We've been talking about movement all night long, but it seems that there's been a confusion about sometimes what is movement actually. In the 1890s, the populist movement, Farmers Alliance, they organized farmers to put together collective marketing and storage of grain. And simultaneously, they developed a network of lecturers that spread an analysis or a platform, the Omaha platform, throughout the country. Their secret was that they were really making a difference in people's lives. Much of our modern organizing has gotten confused. We think that we're a movement organization because we have a large email list and we can generate large amounts of emails to Congress or email petitions. But what we've done functionally is undermine the capacity of the grassroots to feel like they know how to do it themselves. What's an organizer at United Workers said to me is that the job of lawyers, and I'm going to add in politicians, is to make and deliver arguments, to negotiate and deliver arguments. It's the job of organizers to build power. When organizers get confused, when people who think they're involved by getting involved in political calculus, sacrificing principles, they forget to do their job. And when we have that term political calculus, I think this is really fascinating. Calculus is actually the mathematics of changing variables. If you're an organizer, your job isn't to do the political calculus, it's to be the changing variable. You're changing the context within which all these other negotiations, et cetera, in society and politics happen. So I wanted to make sure that this conversation that we're having over these next couple days was, when we talk about organizing and we talk about movement building, that we're grounding that conversation in a healthier, what I believe to be a healthier concept of organizer and on social movement. And so I've invited some really excellent people to speak about these things, and they're going to do that with some of them with the aid of video or slides, etc. So, let's see, Steve Meacham is actually going to forgo the video and slides piece, and he's going to go analog, sort of a unplugged version of what it means to be an organizer. Steve is an organizer with City Life or Vida Urbana. He's been a community organizer for 40 years, and he's been getting some significant attention. Their whole Vida Urbana and City Life have been getting significant attention at PBS, Bill Moyers, etc., the other, Bill with the S. And so I invite Steve to give us a taste of and an introduction to the work he's doing. And all of this will just be a teaser for what we're going to get to be able to experience tomorrow. So Steve, you can either speak from there or come up here.
I guess I can speak from here. I'll save you as an analog guy, I'll save you the trouble of looking back and forth so that'll strain your neck at this late hour. I'm going to start with a question around movement building that at least is a variation of a question many people ask all the time. That has to do with the foreclosure crisis. In this case, 1 million homes were seized in 2010. It's projected that 1.2 million homes will be seized in 2011. Here's the question. Why aren't there mass marches of hundreds of thousands of people on Bank of America tearing the bank down brick by brick in the face of that? All these foreclosures, in the midst of predatory loans, robo-signing, fraudulent activity, deliberate run-up of housing prices through the speculative bubble, why aren't there mass marches? Now, that's a whole discussion in of itself that I'm not going to speak to tonight. But at least part of the answer to that is that actually they are marching in some places, and I'm going to talk about how that's happening in Boston. Just this past week, this past Tuesday, in fact, we did something that we call an eviction blockade, a storied tactic in the history of tenant organizing. This one was for a homeowner who got foreclosed, and the bank, after foreclosure, was trying to evict him out of his home. And the bank was trying to evict him even though he had paid the rent, he had paid rent to the bank for a while until the bank refused to accept it anymore. The bank was trying to evict him even though he had a friend of his who was willing to buy the home at market value and then rent to him and move into the vacant unit and then rent to him. The bank was trying to evict him even though the money the bank said that they wanted for the house, about half of the loan value, easily was affordable to this homeowner had they modified his loan to include a principal reduction to the real value. And that's all the bank's going to get anyway when they sell the property. So despite all these factors, the bank insisted on evicting this family with 5 children and an elderly person. In response, our movement gathered in front of the home. People sat in the doorway and said, yes, you have the legal right to take this home, but we're not going to let you do it. And if we have to, we'll get arrested to stop it. The bank backed off. The bank said, all right, we're going to wait 9 more days, and they're going to try again this Thursday. We're going to go back and have another eviction blockade. Now, we've done these eviction blockades 21 times in the last 3 years, and 18 of those 21 times, the bank has backed off. 3 times we got arrested and the family got evicted. But the eviction blockades are kind of the tip of the iceberg of protest activity that we're engaged in that is a remarkable story of a growing mass movement. Also last week we had 3 protests at foreclosure sale auctions, and the investors who came to the auctions got scared and left. The auctioneer got scared and called down the police. We had a mass meeting of over 100 people. We had a leadership team meeting. We had a mass canvass all in 1 week. So as an organizer, you know, I'm not claiming credit for this. As an organizer, we're partly in city life riding a wave here. You know, we identified an issue. Part of organizing is catching the wave and riding it well. So this is a wave that's out there, but it's a wave that many, many people can catch and are increasingly catching. How to organize people in foreclosed buildings, people faced with foreclosure, people faced with eviction after foreclosure, how to organize those people into resistance. And we have a kind of a metaphor that we use at City Life called the shield and the sword. And we actually have a physical shield and the sword that we bring to our rallies, where the shield is legal defense and the sword is public protest. And on the one hand, we have a lot of volunteer lawyers and our own staff legal expertise that helps people know what to do when they go into court and represent themselves. We can't get everybody lawyers, that for reasons that you can completely understand, but we advise people about their legal rights in mass meetings, and they go represent themselves, and they come back to the next mass meeting a week later and say, here's what happened, what do I do next? And they learn to represent themselves in court, and by the shield, by the legal defense, they slow down the bank. The bank has the right to evict, no fault in Massachusetts. They don't have to have a reason. They evict no fault, but the shield legal defense slows them down. And while the legal defense is slowing them down, we bring to bear the public pressure, the sword. And we bring out this, we shine a big spotlight on that case. And when the banks, when these giant institutions like Bank of America or Chase or Citibank are trying to evict somebody who has offered to buy the house at the same value the bank is going to get after they evict them, but they insist on evicting anyway, they lose all the public relations, they lose the public relations battle, and they typically back off because even after they've evicted a few of our people, the ensuing publicity was such a disaster for the bank that they really lost in the long term anyway. So from our point of view as organizers, we're in this position where we win if we win, and we win if we don't win. Either way, we're going to build the movement. Either way, the banks are going to look terrible. And some of the most active members of our organization are people who actually lost. But even though they lost, as they put it, they went down swinging. And they learned a lot in the process, and they retained their pride, and they didn't lose with shame. They lost with power. And they made the bank pay. And by organizing now, they continue to make the banks pay. And the difference between that and kind of leaving in the middle of the night is a huge difference in organizing, but it's a huge difference in mental health, too, let me tell you. So this is, as Bill earlier described, we're not supposed to speak too long. It's supposed to be a bit of an opening for tomorrow. But I'll just close with a couple more points. One is, as a lefty, I'm really against certain forms of big government. To give you an example, in our eviction blockades, the amount of resources the government has put into courts and police to evict homeowners who are willing to pay rents is an astounding amount of money. There is a big government we could entirely do without. Another thing, it's very important in our organizing that we understand the relationship between our street action and these national debates. Why do we spend a lot of time in our meetings not only on planning actions and testimony and expressions of solidarity and tears of joy and pain, but political discussion. Why did the crisis happen? How is the speculative housing bubble related to the income gap between rich and poor? All those kind of issues that people are coming to understand that give them create the moral space for them to resist. And lastly, just to say, there was a lastly here, but I'll just close with this, that our organizing strategy has something that we call the 5 masses, which is not a nod to the Vatican. It's actually 5 different mass things we're doing every week, just to mention them without describing them. One is mass outreach. We canvass 100 buildings a month, foreclosed buildings. 2 is mass meetings. About 120 people come to our meetings every week. 3 is mass casework, a way of working with people with individual way, but through a collective process that expands our staff capacity. 4 is mass actions. We did a mass action, a public protest against the banks once a week last year. And 5 is mass political discussion to look at the causes of the crisis. So having said that, I'll pass it on.
Pretty exciting. We're going to feature some members of United Workers. And it's interesting how Michael's panel was divided in exploring the relationship as consumers, employees, and citizens. It's sort of interesting because, as Steve just described, a way of interacting with the financial industry as a consumer in a much more powerful way than we're used to. Now, as employees, United Workers has a unique human rights-based model, and Veronica Dorsey will be presenting, and I think Ashley Huffnagel is going to come up and do the AV. Is that true? Yeah. Here, why don't you take this, Veronica? It's yours.
Veronica, do you want to come up so you can see the presentation? Sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So which program are we in? Yes. PowerPoint, right? It's looking funny in this thing.
Sorry, I'm taking
all right.
so long.
You good? You want to just control yourself?
Good evening. My name is Veronica Dorsey. I'm a leadership organizer with the United Workers. We're from Baltimore, Maryland. And I'd like to, first of all, to say thank you for inviting us here to your forum and to give us a chance to tell you how we operate and how we develop leaders from the ranks of the poor so we can be a part of this movement to end poverty. And what that one video slide you just saw by Dr. King, we're going to skip that because I just told we have to cut everything down because tomorrow you'll be having a larger presentation. But the United Workers, we're a human rights organization fighting for an end of poverty. We're led by low-wage workers from the ranks of the poor and also by other members and sectors of different people that come to to be allies and stand in solidarity with us. And what we want to do is unite all poor across color lines and barriers to create a movement